Hello, my MCC Richmond family and beloved visitors and guests. My name is Daniel Burgess, and thank you for inviting me to give today's sermon. For those of you that don't know me, I am part of our great choir, the Spirits of Joy. The Gospel Choir. And our beloved choir director, Jenny, lets me mess around on the drums over there. So I thank you for letting me do that. I'm getting closer and closer every day. I grew up in Southern California, and I went to church where my grandfather was a Lutheran minister. Yeah, there's my family there. He's the one officiating my baptism, and I'm also honored to wear his stole. Not the same one, but... There is a right way to wear this. Okay. In the arts, we have a saying, if you're going to steal, steal from the best.
That's true.
So with that said, I'm going to start with a joke, just like our sexton, Bubba Bruce, with his sermon. What's wrong, Bubba? Asked a visiting preacher. I need you to pray for my hearing, said Bubba. The visiting preacher put her hands on his ears and prayed. When she was done, she asked, so how's your hearing? I don't know, said Bubba. It isn't till next Thursday. Today's sermon theme is light and water. I mentioned in my lectures the psychiatrist Carl Jung and his view of an archetype. He believed an archetype is a pattern of thought that recurs throughout history and across cultures in the form of dreams, myths, and fairy tales. He believed that there were human archetypes, including shadows, old wise persons, or an innocent child. And there are also natural archetypes. Water, which makes up our oceans and rivers, and light, which include sunlight and fire. There is also a theory that of all the defining characteristics of humanity as a species, none is more basic than the inclination to make art. We humans alone, let me say that again, we humans alone, in developing the capacity for symbolic imagery, which so often incorporates archetypes. Images dominate our lives. They tell us how to behave. They even tell us how to feel. They mold and define us. Spirituality has often been connected to some of the most timeless artistic accomplishments, from the great Egyptian pyramids to Michelangelo's beautiful and moving Pietà, and Da Vinci's The Last Supper. These works reflect real, meaningful collaborations between art and faith. To me, one of the most inspiring biblical stories as a painting is Rembrandt's The Return of the Prodigal Son. Now, I always thought prodigal was a strange word. I had no other correlation to the word other than knowing this passage from Luke. It is defined as carelessly and foolishly spending money and time. And it is a classic story. Here we have a younger son. Jewish hierarchy, the oldest son is everything. Everything goes to that oldest son. So, younger sons, daughters, it didn't really matter. But sometimes, even over time, some people play favorites with their children. And I think we have a special case here. The kid has the audacity to go to his father and say, this isn't working for me. I know you love me, but, and I know older brother Joe is supposed to get everything, but, this father, this patriarch, this Jewish patriarch, gives his son the money. Do y'all know the saying, a fool and his money are soon departed, or soon separated? Yeah. This is what this kid does. This kid, he takes the ticket, he flies to Vegas, he's at the strip joints, he's making it rain, he's going to the bars, he's drinking. I don't know how long he goes through this money, but it's quickly. It's hot out there. The desert's hot. He's not staying at the penthouse anymore. He's out on the streets. He's looking around. Well, what am I able to do out here in the desert? I don't have any really good skill sets. I'm going to have to take a job that nobody else wants. Well, what is the one job for a Jew that is the worst possible job you can possibly get? Pigs. Pigs are anathema. Pigs are the most vile and disgusting of creatures, and in your Jewish life, you avoid every bit of it, from eating to touching to be around it. Well, he's looking through the help wanted ads, and what's available? Pig herder, pig babysitter, essentially. It's 101 degrees. He's sitting out with the pigs. He can't go take the money and go take a lunch break. He can't afford it. He's at a certain point where he's sharing. He's sharing the food with the pigs. Do you know what that means? He's a Jew. He has a beard. He has the uncut hair. He's covered in pig poop. In probably some desperate moment against Jewish law, he can't get a Mach 3 expensive razor at Walmart. He probably has to take a pottery shard, something nobody else wants, and he's having to cut at probably his own beard. And he's not going to get that beautiful shave all us men have this morning. Same thing with his hair. I think we've all had a desperate moment. And I think this man said, my God, is there really nothing else in this world that I can go and do? As bad as I've made my father feel, couldn't I actually go back and say, you don't have to take me back as a son. Just take me back as a worker. I'll do anything. And he says, yes, this is what I need to do. And so he goes back, and for biblical historians, one of the great things is the idea that this patriarch, this man, takes his tunic, and when he sees this beloved son, he raises it up. And oh my God, heaven forbid you show shins at that time, any amount of flesh, especially around the feet. Raises up his tunic, runs to his son, and embraces him. And he says, my God, my son is alive. He is alive. And he is back with the family. Here, Rembrandt has tenderly shown this son at his feet with his father. And that's a beautiful thing. And art historians will say that probably this man in the tunic here is the older brother. I don't like that interpretation. To me, the older brother is one you can hardly see. He's the one in the back. He's the one in the dark. And it doesn't matter about Christian, Buddhist, Muslim. We have all been in these two men's places. We have been the person that needs to be forgiven, and we have all been the one to begrudge someone for being forgiven. Please pray with me. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my Redeemer. To paraphrase today's gospel reading, we start in Jerusalem, where there's a pool. And it's sometimes healed. It was called Bethesda in our modern day parlance. And around it were many disabled people. One sick man was there for almost 40 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, he knew this. He knew. And simply asked, "Do you want to be made well?" He answered, "I have no one to put me in the pool when the water heals. And as I drag myself along, someone else steps ahead of me." Jesus said, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." At that, the man took up his mat and began to walk. And Jesus dared to do this on the Sabbath. Now, on top of that story, we also have an extra scriptural tradition of an angel involved who would come and bathe at the pool. Do y'all love angels? Mm-hmm. I love angels, yeah. I think they're a beautiful thing. In the myth, although people cannot see the angel, they thought he was there because of the disturbance, the troubling of the water. It was believed that whoever got into the water first would be cured of their illness. In other words, they believed in a kind of health lottery. Our angel from our story has found a strong place in our collective imagery. We also know him on stage and on film. I think many of us are familiar with Tony Kushner's two-part play, Angels in America. And a lot of us have seen it as HBO's miniseries version, directed by the late, great Mike Nichols. Who doesn't want to watch great actors like Al Pacino, Meryl Streep, and Emma Thompson? The film introduced several characters representing Jews and Christians, agnostics, homosexuals, and heterosexuals, blacks and whites, men and women. An American mix which reveals the care between each of them. And the last scene is centered on the curative power of the Bethesda fountain in New York City's Central Park. The angel sculpture was designed by a woman, rare at this time. Her name was Emma Stebbins, a successful female sculptor in the second half of the 19th century. The angel has water bursting out of her feet, pouring into a series of basins, and into then a large pool where the water is always in motion, allowing you to place yourself in the sandals of the crippled man. It is certainly no mistake that the Gospel of John includes this story. John is a unique gospel writer. Matthew, Mark, Luke, called the Synoptic Gospels, have some shared materials not found in John. And John has material not found in the Synoptics, such as our Pool of Bethesda story. Father Raymond Brown points out that our gospel writer writes a Jesus where he must use the language of man to convey his message. To deal with the differences, he uses images to describe himself and his message. The hearers of John's Jesus misunderstand him because they take the message too literally, not knowing his reply will actually have multifold meanings. Well, this often, smart man, leads Jesus to be able to explain thoughts more thoroughly. John's Jesus believes he comes from God. It is fitting that his words then are more solemn and more poetic. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him. What has come into being in him was life, and life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Through metaphors like light, which is essential for sight and often associated with knowledge, and water, cooling, refreshing, birth, rebirth, and baptism, Jesus shows himself as essential to living an abundant life. In the letters of John, we hear a continuing motif. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light, but that whoever hates his brother is in the darkness. God is light, is stressing that our ability to love others is solely due to something new God has done, something new through Jesus. Jesus' response to the man at the pool was quite different from his reaction to others who came to him for healing. He did not touch the man. He did not command an evil spirit to leave the man. He did not say, "I heal you." Jesus said, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." In this man's case, taking action is the opposite of making excuses. Taking action here is itself therapeutic. By this man doing something, it had healing power. Let me be clear. Many may want to interpret this passage as, if you wanted healing bad enough, or just prayed harder, or believed stronger, God will reward you and cure you. No. Illness cannot be ignored. If you ignore pain, it will not disappear. Jesus saw and recognized this. Jesus faced this person with the question, do you want to be healed? If you want to be healed, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Jesus knows our weaknesses, addictions, and habits, our inability to forgive, our resentment deeply embedded in our past. And Jesus lovingly asks us, do you want to be healed? Help us to say yes. Help us to take you at your word. May the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Amen.
Amen.